Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
And the rockets' red lanterns at first gave us proof. They proved through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
A resolution was passed in 1926 inviting all Americans to remember Armistice Day and the soldiers who fought so hard for peace. The idea caught on. By 1938, the day was marked with so many ceremonies and parades, Congress made it a legal holiday, giving people the day off work. After World War II and the Korean War, Americans wanted to open up the holiday to include not just World War I veterans, but all who served in combat. In 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower, a World War II vet himself, legally changed the U.S. Armistice Day to Veterans Day, honoring those who served in all American wars. Over the decades, the holiday has changed with the times. Originally, it was a call for world peace. Then in the U.S., it became a day to remember war veterans. Today, Veterans Day is set aside to honor not just those who served in war, but also those who have served their nation in peace.
It was pretty incredible. I joined at 17, I turned 18 in basic training. I turned 20 in Iraq on my first deployment. I ended up doing 2 deployments to Iraq, 1 deployment to Afghanistan. You know, you learn a lot, you meet a lot of amazing people, you know, that put you in front of themselves, and it's very humbling at times to kind of serve with those people and be over there and do that job. And then also, you experience what the world is like outside of the U.S. and the protection and things like that. You know, you see what happens in third world countries. You see a lot of things like that that, you know, you don't always get to see back here. So
it's a great opportunity to see the world and see different cultures and how they you know, socialize, and it was a great experience. And that's the reason why I stayed in the reserves, to keep up. I enjoyed what I was doing, as well as getting to go around the world. I ended up flying on what's called a P-3 Orion aircraft. So that's patrol aviation. It's got 4 turboprops on it. And there were 13 of us that flew on that aircraft. So sometimes when you hear, it's kind of funny, but they call them spy planes or something like that. That's the type of aircraft. It has a lot of electronics on it for surveying. The primary mission of the P-3 at the time I joined was for anti-submarine warfare. So what we would do is we would get deployed into a certain area of the ocean, and there were sensors that we drop from the aircraft, sonobuoys. They deploy and they listen for noises. Those noises get transmitted back up to the aircraft. And then my job was to take those noises and determine if it was a surface ship, a submarine. There's whales. You hear all kinds of stuff in the ocean, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And from the characteristics of the submarine, I could determine if it was a Soviet submarine or United States submarine or some allied submarine. And we kept track of all the Soviets off the coast of the United States during the time of the Cold War.
When my daughter first told us that she was joining the military, my husband and I we had so many emotions. We were proud and we were excited and we were worried. You know, as parents, it's really scary to think about your child being far away and perhaps being in danger. But most of all, we were just really proud of her. She was really active in band, and had always talked about going to college right out of high school. And so it just seemed like the kind of thing that kids say when they're younger and don't really do. And then as a senior, she turned 18 and went to a recruiter's office and joined. If you are assigned to a carrier crew, like they're like giant floating cities. There's thousands and thousands of people on board, and they're unless you're leaving the carrier, like I felt just so safe knowing that that's where she was. The hardest part was not being able to talk to her whenever I wanted, right? So, and I couldn't. I had to just trust that she would call whenever she could, and that was the hardest part, was being out of touch and not knowing when I would hear from her, and having this very sporadic contact. That was really tough.
My family's history in terms of serving in the armed forces is quite extensive, apparently. As far as more recently, my father was in the Air Force, both my grandfathers were in the Air Force, uncles were in the Air Force, my aunt was in the Air Force. I was especially proud of my aunt because she became a full bird colonel, and the next promotion she would have received if she had continued to be in the Air Force would have been Brigadier General. Father earned his Purple Heart as a result of, it's actually kind of humorous, if you've seen Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump got his Purple Heart as a result of getting hit in the rear end with shrapnel. Well, my grandfather was a medic and was, I'm assumingly, out in the field trying to take care of fallen comrades, and he too actually got shrapnel in his rear end, and that is how he earned his Purple Heart.
Veterans Day means a lot to me because I get to take a second to recognize those guys for what they do and what they are still doing. The veteran community itself, guys come back and they get out, and they don't just get out and do whatever. They go into their communities, they help out, they set up programs for other veterans to come back that need help with things like PTSD and TBI. So taking a day, an official day, which is kind of nice, to kind of recognize, you know, what they're all about and what you know, has gone on in our time and in our country since the start of Veterans Day, like back in World War I, with like the armistice and stuff like that. It means a lot to me to be able to pause as a country, whether it's for a minute or whatever, and just kind of appreciate you know, everything that's been done over the years for us by these all volunteer forces. Like everybody that joins is a volunteer. They want to be there. They want to do what they're doing. So it's kind of amazing that you think about that. Not every country has an all volunteer force like we do.
You know, you end up having to adapt, and it's kind of interesting because when you get placed into situations that aren't really a lot of fun, but you always make the most of it, and you always have your brother next to you, the you know, people you're serving with, and you trust them with your life, and they trust you with theirs, and you never want to fail them. So you're always looking out for them.
Yeah. I was thinking how much I wanted to join the Air Force when I was in high school. I even applied for the UW ROTC program, and I didn't get it, but I felt a real sense of, hey, I need to serve my country, and I felt a very strong connection to my family having done so. And even though I didn't make it into the ROTC program at UW, and actually never did join the Air Force, I feel good in knowing I'm still serving my country in the professions I've chosen as a healthcare provider and as an educator. Certainly appreciate the sacrifice that our service people make in leaving their families, the sacrifice of their time, that they're doing things that they're being told to do as opposed to having free will to pursue whatever it is they want to pursue at any particular given time. Our younger generations have the ability, the liberty, the freedom to perhaps not feel the urge to join the armed forces as a result of those past who had made the sacrifices needed to live in the world that we live in today.
Memorial Day is for, you know, recognizing people that have given the ultimate sacrifice. Veterans Day is about the guys that are still here, that have gone overseas and come back. I think that it's important for Veterans Day to recognize the sacrifice. You know, when you deploy and you go overseas, you're gone for a long period of time, 15-month, 12-month deployments, and life still continues back here. You miss out on a lot. And while you're over there, you go through a lot of hardships. It's not the best of conditions. And so recognizing the sacrifice that those guys make and are still making today when they come back, you know, it is kind of nice to come back and have the community come together and do what they do.
America, sweet America, you know, God done shed his grace on thee. He crowned thy good. Yes, he did. Heavy brotherhood from sea to shining sea. You know, I wish I had somebody to help me sing this.